Leadership is the act of moving ideas or groups toward a set of goals. The leader is the person who drives that process either from a position of authority or a position of influence. The servant leader is a style of leader where the leader uses his, her, or their knowledge, skills, abilities, and resources for the betterment of the group and seeks no glory or praise for themselves. Servant leadership often comes at great personal and professional costs. Can you think of some servant leaders and the price they paid? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, or Malala Yousafzai, just to name a few. And for those of you who don't know who Malala Yousafzai is, she's a Pakistani activist and the youngest ever Nobel Prize laureate. Yousafzai was injured on October 9, 2012 by a Taliban gunman when he attempted to murder her for going to school. Why did they take such huge risks? To be a servant to humanity. No man is an island, the old adage states. Humanity is a relational act. Can you imagine what would happen to a fruit tree if the juices of that tree were exclusively fed back to that tree? How healthy would that tree be? Well, not healthy at all. And that's because the juice of the tree is designed to be consumed by others. So it is with our leadership time and talent. Why is it that the World War II veterans are called the greatest generation? Because of the great service they gave. So yes, Dr. King was correct. Everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Leadership is the act of moving ideas or groups toward a set of goals. Leadership is about service and the recognition that moving people toward common goals can be challenging, but the rewards of goal accomplishment, individual engagement, and team development can outweigh those challenges. Here are 3 things to think about. Leadership is more than a position. It's about how to create collective action. Leaders must understand the roles of followers by having been a follower. Leadership is a balance of the goals and the people. It's about service to both. So here are 3 things to do. As a leader, one must be mindful of the goals and outcomes. Engage, enlist, encourage the group in the building of strategies, approaches, and action plans towards the goal. Hold the group accountable for the achievement or failure to accomplish the goals. Context is everything. Context is simply the geographic places where we developed, the physical environment where we socialized in, and the governmental and religious systems that educated us. Our methods and learnings from this context, we will call it culture. Culture is an adaptation to a particular context. Minnesota and Florida approach winter very differently because of the context. Consequently, they have very different cultures. We know that as times move forward, context changes. Context is constantly shifting and changing, therefore, culture is always in a state of flux. Fashions, fads, and taboos are clear markers of these cultural shifts. Today's pet rock will be tomorrow's fidget spinner. Culture has a core set of values that are physically manifested as artifacts. Arts, music, food, presentation, clothing are all representation of the value a culture holds. These artifacts are designed to teach future generations the core values and history of their cultural group. So when we see customs we don't understand, communication styles foreign to us, as a leader, I might want to find out more about the context from which that cultural norm has come. Context is everything. Understanding someone's background is critical to understanding them. The more information you have about the people in your groups, the better you'll be able to recognize what they all have to offer the team. As you move these individuals to a functional team, the recognition of their background could be critical to the team's development. Here are 3 things to think about. Context is the nurturing or developmental environment we've had very little control over. Geography, location, and our generations have had a huge impact on our worldview. To better understand individuals and groups, it's helpful to get to know where they come from and their stories. Here are 3 things to do. Recognize that you have a context and culture that has helped you produce a worldview and paradigm. Provide opportunities for your group to share background, learning styles, and challenges they've overcome. Ask groups when faced with conflict to take a step back and ask if the impasse could be a context or cultural issue. There's no inherent conflict between human beings. People have to be taught to dislike each other. What we typically refer to as conflict is often differing methods to a similar goal. High context cultures, low context cultures, personality types, personal differences could all be sources of perceived conflicts when in fact they're more about our approaches to goal attainment. We want similar things, but not all the same things. We don't all want the same things. There's more than one car company. Our gene selection is almost limitless, and the resources we seek to advance our lives can be augmented, replaced, or repurposed. How we communicate could also be a source of conflict. Conflicts in communication often result from a lack of understanding culture, a lack of time-building relationships, and a lack of understanding core motivations. Many individuals would rather avoid conflict, as leaders must use our tools of communication to help navigate perceived conflict. Understanding group dynamics. Bruce Tuckman in 1965 said that these norming, forming, storming, and performing phases are all necessary and inevitable in order for the team to grow, face up to challenges, tackle problems, find solutions, plan work, and deliver results. As a leader, it's important to use the tool of communication to navigate individuals and groups through conflict to results. Forming the team meets and learns about the opportunities and challenges, and then agrees on goals and begins to tackle the tasks. Team members tend to behave quite independently. They may be motivated, but are usually relatively uninformed of the issues and objectives of the team. Team members are usually on their best behavior, but very focused on themselves. Mature team members begin to model appropriate behavior even at this early phase. The meeting environment also plays an important role to model the initial behaviors of each individual. The major task functions also concern orientation. Members attempt to become oriented to the tasks as well as one another. Discussion centers around defining the scope of the task, how to approach it, and similar concerns. Storming. In this stage, participants form opinions about the character and integrity of the other participants and feel compelled to voice these opinions if they find someone shirking responsibility or attempting to dominate. Sometimes participants question the actions or the decisions of the leader as the expedition grows harder. Disagreements and personality clashes must be resolved before the team can progress out of this stage. So, some teams may never emerge from storming, or may re-enter that phase if new challenges or disputes arise. In Tuckman's 1965 paper, only 50% of the studies identified a stage of intra-group conflict, and some of the remaining studies jump directly from stage 1 to stage 3. Some groups may avoid the phase altogether, but for those who don't, the duration, intensity, and destructiveness of the storms can be varied. Tolerance of each team member and their differences should be emphasized. Without tolerance and patience, the team will fail. This phase can become destructive to the team and will lower motivation if allowed to get out of control. Some teams will never develop past this stage. However, disagreements within the team can make members stronger, more versatile, and able to work more effectively as a team. Supervisors of the team during this phase may be more accessible, but tend to remain directive in their guidance and decision-making and professional behavior. The team members will therefore resolve their differences, and members will be able to participate with one another. Norming. Resolved disagreements and personality clashes result in greater intimacy, and a spirit of cooperation emerges. This happens when the team is aware of competition and they share a common goal. In this stage, all team members take the responsibility and have the ambition to work for the success of the team's goals. They start tolerating the whims and fancies of the other team members. They accept others as they are and make an effort to move on. The danger here is that members may be so focused on preventing conflict that they're reluctant to share controversial ideas. Performing with group norms and roles established, group members focus on achieving common goals, often reaching an unexpectedly high level of success. By this time, they're motivated and knowledgeable. The team members are now competent, autonomous, and able to handle this decision-making process without supervision. Dissent is expected and allowed as long as it's channeled through means acceptable to the team. There is no inherent conflict between human beings, although we may want many of the same thing. How we attain these things may be quite different. People have to be taught to dislike each other. As the song statement from the musical South Pacific, to hate and fear, you've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. Here are 3 things to think about. Conflict is often rooted in a perception that goals can't or won't be accomplished or reached. Conflict can be mitigated when we seek to understand culture, goals, and motivations. All human beings are looking for safety, significance, and belonging. And here are 3 things to do. Educate the group on the learning and life cycle of groups, forming, norming, storming, and performing. Practice working through conflict, team building games or activities. Hold the group accountable for conflict negotiations by working through them and reminding them of the goals and outcomes.